If you've been doing everything you're supposed to do to manage your ADHD and you're still stuck, overwhelmed, or questioning yourself, this episode is for you. Today, we're talking about the invisible obstacles that make your ADHD worse, the kind that hide under perfectionism, people pleasing, or an overloaded plate, but actually stem from old wounds, fear of judgment, and deep self doubt you may not even realize you're carrying. By the end of this episode, you'll start to see those patterns for what they really are, not signs that you're broken, but signs that it's time to stop bracing and start building from a place of inner safety. Be sure to listen. Welcome to the Self-Loved ADHD Woman's Way podcast. I'm your host, Jen Barnes. If you're an ADHD woman entrepreneur, ADHD adjacent, or ADHD-ish, you've come to the right place. We'll dive deep into the unique challenges you face, from the inner turmoil to the outer obstacles. We'll blend neuroscience, IFS, and somatic healing, and explore practical strategies to help you navigate the world of entrepreneurship with ADHD with greater ease and effectiveness. I'm glad you're here. Hey, it's Jen. I'm so glad you're here. Before we get into it, I want to take a moment to celebrate. This is our 100th episode, which means you have stuck with me over 100 weeks. And dang, that's amazing. And I gotta say also, that means no matter when I was on vacation or traveling for work, I have for 100 weeks recorded this podcast consistently, which I gotta say feels like no small feat for ADHD and perhaps speaks to the power of some of the things I teach and use myself. Because I'm one of those people that I don't recommend anything I don't already do myself or wouldn't do if I was in the same situation. So anyway, let's celebrate. Woohoo. We've done it 100 episodes. And I want to say a special thank you to my VAs who have helped make this possible, because it is super special to get to keep doing this, because I love helping people. And this is a way I know I can help and serve. And so if you're here, thank you for letting me do that work with you. All right. So today, since we're celebrating our 100th episode, I thought it particularly important to share about something that I do that is unique to me. This is something that I created, developed over my 25 plus years in the field of mental health and all of the training I've had from that time, as well as growing up and navigating the world ADHD myself and working with people with ADHD. So we're going to talk about something that is unique to me that you're probably only going to get here when we talk about ADHD. So let's dig into it. If you have been doing all the right things, you're using the planners and then switching the planners when they get boring, right? Because we need novelty. You've been using the timers, Pomodoro method, managing your energy, creating and boosting baseline dopamine through things like exercise and cultivating gratitude, eating protein at every meal, whatever. You're doing all the things for your ADHD and you're still stuck. This episode is for you. Sometimes the real obstacles aren't obvious ADHD symptoms. They're the invisible ones that are beneath the surface, the old fears, doubts, and beliefs we've carried for a long time, sometimes decades, often without realizing it. Because I got to tell you, if you're anything like me and you masked your ADHD and didn't even know you had it because of overfunctioning and high achievement and some people pleasing and perfectionism to just put the icing on that cake, then you probably think, I'm not afraid. Look at all the stuff I've done. I don't have an insecurity. I'm awesome. Look at all my achievements. I get it. Yet there are still signs that this might be what is blocking you now, that you're trying to go bigger than you've gone before, or maybe are burned out from your old ways of doing things. Because after years and years of masking, decades even, of masking through overfunctioning, perfectionism, people pleasing, what have you, we get to a point where it stops working. So we're going to unpack this by starting with what some of these emotional and psychological obstacles or barriers are that oftentimes we don't even realize that we're battling. So the first we're going to start with is fear of failure or rejection. And this one is often masked as perfectionism or over prepping. So if you're like, I'm not afraid of failure, I'm not whatever. But if you're having a hard time putting something out there because it's not perfect, or you're over preparing, or you're procrastinating because, again, you don't want to start until it can be perfect, or you have the right training, or enough training, or certifications, or letters behind your name, whatever it is, beneath that, if we lean in and get curious, is often a fear of failure, a fear of rejection, and a fear of criticism. Another one that's really common is deep insecurity that shows up as people pleasing or over commitment, which is often masked further by high achievement. So you might, again, be like, I'm not insecure. Look at all this stuff I've done. And that's true. But if you are masking by doing all this overachievement and the people pleasing, a lot of times there is an insecurity there. Like maybe you feel people are going to think you're not good enough or you're too much. So you say yes to everything so that they give you grace when they see that you're actually not good enough or that you have your ADHD challenges come up. Another common one is self-doubt, hiding behind phrases like, I'm just not that kind of person, or I can't, instead of asking, how can I? I see this one a lot when people no longer have the structure that they once had in their life. So whether that's working a job and they're becoming an entrepreneur, or we're in school and now are figuring out what to do after school, when that external natural structure goes away, this can show up a lot like, oh, that's just not, like, I'm allergic to routines. I can't do routines. Or, oh, yeah, I can't, that won't work for me. A lot of times there's self doubt in there that you couldn't make it happen. When the reality is, you probably can. It's just a matter of figuring out how to do these things in a way that work for your brain, your ADHD, your ways of living and navigating in this world. You might be over functioning as masking and or a trauma response, not necessarily as ambition. So sure, you're probably very ambitious if you're listening to this. I tend to have people who have great ideas and even lots of achievements, but you might be over functioning as a way to cover up or overcompensate for your ADHD. And so that is another one of these inner obstacles you might be battling. And last but not least, doing more as a way to avoid being seen as lazy or unreliable. And that kind of ties into some of the things we've already talked about. But there's this like, yeah, I can do that. I can do that. I can do that. And then no one could ever say that you're lazy or unreliable because you're doing all these amazing things. So I want to name that there's no shame in any of this. Many of us absorbed these messages early on that we were too much, not enough, or somehow just wrong. So we learned, like our little girl selves figured out how to mask or overachieve or both so that we could not just get through and survive our youth, but actually do so intact, right? Like not being a hot mess in adulthood or falling apart. And so if you're listening to this and you're still not seeing it, or even if you are, here are some ways that these wounds still show up today. You might notice a fear of judgment, and this could show up in avoiding putting yourself out there. So maybe you have a YouTube channel, but you haven't made any videos, or an Instagram account and you haven't posted anything, or maybe you haven't even created anything. Or it could be if you're in a career, in a job, it might be that fear of judgment is you don't ask for more advanced work or projects that might expose you to the criticism of others. You try and stay small so that way people don't have a chance to make pot shots at you. You might have self-doubt that looks like avoiding big asks at work. So you avoid being seen as too much or not enough. Or even fears of people saying things like, who does she think she is? Which is kind of like that hidden imposter syndrome, like this fear of being found out. Like, oh my gosh, they're going to figure out that everything is just holding on by a very thin thread that's thinner than even you want to admit. So this is some of the stuff, right? It might also be seeking external validation over internal alignment that can look like an overflowing to-do list because you've said yes and overcommitted to please others and do what they want. You might be masking avoidance by saying something like, this is just how I am, which is more about learned helplessness, not ability, not radical acceptance of needing to do things your own way. And that learned helplessness of, I can't because of my ADHD. Don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to be ableist here. You do have ADHD, or you're ADHD curious or ADHD adjacent. So I get it. There are some things that are going to be challenging for you. But instead of saying, up, I can't, throwing up your hands, it's again, how can you find ways to work with your brain? And yes, radically accepting that there are just some things that are going to be how you are, but that doesn't mean you don't do anything or you don't achieve the things you want to achieve. It just means you might do it your own way, differently than perhaps other people are doing it. So if you catch yourself in procrastination with or without perfectionism, you might have a nervous system that is still bracing for criticism. So much of procrastination can be avoidance of putting ourselves out there. A lot of times because we're like, I just don't want to be criticized anymore. You've heard me mention this. Dr. Michael Jelenic, either out of Harvard or Stanford, I can never remember, so I just kind of gave up trying. But he's a psychiatrist, child psychiatrist, and he has noted that by age 10, starting at school age, by age 10, ADHD kids, whether we know we have it or not, he estimates receive 20,000 more negative, critical, or corrective comments than their non-ADHD peers. And if you're like, well, I didn't get criticized, number one, I would say, are you sure? Because even though I was masking very well through overfunctioning and high achievement, there were signs. There were social signs, ways that my peers gave me feedback that they didn't like me or want to know me. I'll never forget one. We were at this on recess and I was 6 years old and she took me aside and she was like, yeah, Jenny, I think it's time our friendship came to an end. And I don't remember what the else she said, but it was like this very serious comment or conversation, or, well, it wasn't a conversation. She was telling me. So I guess it was a comment, a long comment, series of comment about how I wasn't good enough to be her friend at 6. So we get that. Or for me, yeah, my grades were always great. I was always told I was conscientious because I was terrified of not being on top of things in my Catholic school, which made me develop ability to do structure and strategies. Great. However, that didn't turn into an anxiety disorder later. And I also had ways that it came out. Every report card I had said, she talks too much. She's got to stop interrupting. Her locker's too messy. My mom always, your room is a mess, and keep your shit out of my house. I don't think she said shit, but keep your stuff out of my house if you're going to be messy in your room. So at least she allowed for that to some degree, but there was still the criticism. So you may not even realize that criticism was there, or maybe you truly weren't criticized, but maybe you masked your ass off to avoid it because you saw how others were judged and criticized. I know that is a piece of my overfunctioning and high achievement in school, because like I said, in that Catholic school, I can think of at least 2 of the boys who probably looking back, they most definitely had ADHD, but they didn't know how to mask it or do anything about it, or maybe couldn't. I was gifted with a loving family and a supportive mom, so I was able to figure out some tools, but they didn't, and they were in trouble all the time. It's probably why I still remember their first and last names to this day, even though that was like 40 years ago or more. So there may have been ways that criticism was there. And so your nervous system may still be bracing for it in some way. Even if you didn't receive it, even if you witnessed it, you still may be trying to avoid it. And what if it's not that your strategies aren't working anymore, but that they're being blocked by all of this emotional residue that hasn't been cleared? What if it's like, instead of seeking constant strategies like, oh, that one didn't work, that one won't work, that one won't work, instead saying, first of all, strategies only work for a while, then we have to switch it up because our brains like novelty. And there's brain stuff that I talk about in other episodes to understand that. But there's also these emotional and psychological pieces that are contributing to the problem. It's not just about the strategy. That oversimplifies the problem because you weren't raised in a vacuum. You didn't grow up with ADHD in a neurotypical world not designed for your brain without also being present in that world and being exposed to how people experience you and the ways that they communicated verbally or non-verbally about that. So if this hits home, it's important to acknowledge that these strategies, these ways of masking, people-pleasing, perfectionism, were a way that parts of you developed to protect you. They were just trying to help you do the best you could in the environment you were in at the time. But the problem is, these strategies are no longer working. So whether, you're burned out or the people pleasing isn't working because you figure out that people don't actually like you, they just like what you do for them. So you feel like you don't really have any reciprocal relationships, or maybe you don't feel like you even know yourself because you've been masking so much. These are signs like this isn't working anymore. So then the question becomes, what can you do about it? And first, I'm always going to say, you got to regulate your nervous system. This one is so essential. And you've heard me say it. I'm going to say it again. If you've been listening, if this is your first episode, then you're going to hear me say it the first time. And whether you have ADHD or not, when your nervous system is dysregulated, and what I mean by that is you're in your fight or flight response, your freeze response, or your shutdown response, when that's going on, your brain, your body's only priority is survival. So it doesn't matter if you can have that conversation with your boss about getting a promotion, or do that special project at work, or put out a podcast. Like, you're not going to be able to do any of that because your brain isn't like, oh, that's important. No, your brain is like, we have to live right now. So if you're struggling to get stuff done, one of the inner obstacles that you may not be seeing is a dysregulated nervous system. So always a piece of this work is doing something to get regulated. And if you're like, how, Jen? Well, I talk about this in all of my content, so you can check it out. There's a lot of YouTube videos on my channel about it. It's at Jen Barnes, Barnes, like Barnes and Noble, no relation. But you can check it out. There's lots of ones on nervous system regulation there. It's also something I teach in my program, is how to regulate your nervous system. Because when you can regulate, which is important, if you're shut down versus fight or flight, it's going to be a different way of doing it. But when you can learn to regulate, you'll be able to get yourself to focus in the moment and do what you need to do. And further, it's going to be essential to work with these inner emotional obstacles, which really means working with the parts of you that are stuck in the past. Because here's the truth. And as much as I'm not a fan of Bessel van der Kolk's personality, his research is solid. It is true that the body keeps the score. Whatever has happened to us throughout our life is held in our body unless we have done something to release it. So if you have some of these old wounds that we've been talking about, or old patterns, there are parts of you that do not know that it is 2025 or whatever year you're listening to this, that you are your current age when you're listening to this, or that even bigger than that, you are more than just your body and mind, that you are that inner light, that inner divinity, if you will, that resides within, that inner consciousness. And that is the core of who you are, that self with a capital S. But your parts don't know that. They still think you're a little girl or a teenager or a young adult who doesn't get it enough yet. So they are protecting you in the only way they know how, with the skills that you had at the time these parts came online. And if you're like, Jen, I don't have multiple personalities. No, I know you don't. But we all have parts. Just like you have a part of you that maybe wants to go get ice cream right now. And there's another part that's like, oh, we haven't had dinner yet. Or, oh, that's a lot of sugar for today. Or, I don't know, my pants are tight. So ice cream is probably not the best choice. I don't know what goes through your mind, but we have these different parts and we just experience them as different thoughts and feelings. But really, they're just different parts of you with different goals. Well, maybe not even different goals. It's more, they all want you to be well. It's just that they have different ways, like safe and well, and they have different ways about going about it. And so that in order to have you function today with skills of today in your adult self, it is essential to figure out how to navigate, like how to work with these parts and let them see that you can navigate the world as a grown-up, that you've got this. And that's some deeper work that I do one-to-one coaching with in my program. But how do you do it on your own? Well, it starts with awareness. It starts with noticing when a part is taking over, when something like this is coming up. And how might you notice? Well, if you feel blocked, that would be a really good way. If you find yourself super hyper distracted and nothing is working to get you back, not even regulating your nervous system. If you're finding yourself not wanting to do something. Yeah, if you've made it interesting and you're still just, maybe there's something deeper going in. And so when you get stuck, that's a great time to lean in, get curious and say, oh, I wonder what is going on here. I wonder what this is about. And lean in with both that curiosity and compassion because this part is trying to help you. And the you they think they are helping is actually a much younger version of you. So they want you to do great things. They just don't see that the way they're helping doesn't help your current you. And so some of the work is helping them see your light, helping them see who you are now. And part of that can even be being with these parts in a way that you needed someone to be with you back then. So maybe when that person was telling me that on recess when I was 6, that she didn't want to be my friend, what I really needed someone to do at that moment is say, honey, it's okay. We don't have to be everybody's friend. Not everyone, we're not for everyone. And that doesn't mean we're bad, unlikable, too much, or not enough. And so when you can say something like that to your younger selves that are stuck in the past, they can start to release their grip, or the parts protecting them can start to release their grip on you in the present. And sure, sometimes there's deeper work that can be done around that. And again, that's more what we do in my program. But this can be a nice start to just give yourself some wiggle room. On the outside, when you catch yourself using the phrase, I can't, or I don't know, this is just how I am, pause. Let yourself pause. Validate that part of you coming up. Validate that, of course, something inside of you thinks you can't because of ADHD or whatever you've been told about yourself that some parts of you believe, hooked onto in some way. Be with that. Validate that makes sense that those feelings are there. And then say, you know what? I'm now, however old you are, I'm 51. I'm 51 and I've got more skills now. I've got more strategies and I've got this. It's okay. I've got this. And as you do that, and as you let your parts see that you've got this, they will start to make more space for you to take the lead. It's a really beautiful process, and I highly recommend it. And instead of saying I can't, you'll be able to more easily say, how can I? In my own way that works for my own unique ADHD brain. All right, so this work is deep, it's tender, but it's also the key to unlocking the version of you that doesn't have to overcompensate to be seen or to succeed. And if you're like, this is too much to do on my own, I want to share something with you. I don't really often share this because it's a big leap. My program is intensive and the investment is high, both time-wise and monetarily. However, if you're like really serious about doing this work and you're done with being blocked and you don't know how to do it on your own, even if you've been listening to me for 100 episodes and you're ready to take the next step, I have my program Ascend, the ADHD Women's Mastery Program. And inside that program, it's super high touch. You get 1 hour one-to-ones with me. I'm actually expanding it now. It has been a standard 12 one-to-ones, but sometimes that can be a price point that is inaccessible for people, and some people don't need 12 one-to-ones. So now there's a more affordable option for 6 one-to-ones, and then you still get all the small group coaching, all of the content, our body doubling sessions that are weekly, and sometimes we have a second one each week. There's a lot of amazing ways that I support you in this journey, including that we come up with what your SMART goals are, your specific, measurable, achievable, oh my gosh, I forgot the R, and time-focused goals are, and that we work to help you achieve them so that you actually see change in the year of the program. So if this interests you at all, I have put a link in the chat for you to check out the landing page for this. And if you're like, yeah, that's great, but that's a huge investment, I've never even have a conversation with you, there's a spot on that page to book a clarity call with me. And we can have a conversation and see if I'm a fit for you and if you're a fit for our program, because I'd love to have you there. So, all right, y'all, happy 100th episode. Thank you for being here. If you're not following or if you're watching us on YouTube, subscribed, hit that follow or subscribe button, do the like. I would love it if you would share this podcast, because when you do that, I am able to help more ADHD women, and it makes it more likely that this will even pop up as something available to you. So please like, share, subscribe, whatever you need to do, and I'll see you in the next episode. Take care.